Oh, look. She didn't even lower her voice. The wallet finally made it. I heard her say it before I even crossed the room. My name is Philbert Mullins, and that woman, the one in the gold dress, laughing with her back to me, that's my wife, Daphne. 23 years, 2 kids through school, one man standing in the doorway of the Langham, Melbourne, holding an invitation she personally handed me 3 weeks ago. Be there for my moment, she said. Not ours, mine. The ballroom was everything she always wanted, and everything I quietly paid for. Floor to ceiling draped silk, 100 guests in black tie, champagne that cost more per glass than I spend on lunch. The label on the event banner read, Daphne Mullins Collection in brushed gold. My trademark, my registered business, my $280,000. She just didn't know that part yet. I straightened my tie, the same one I'd worn to our daughter's graduation, and walked in. The room was full of people I'd never met, fashion people, Melbourne money, a photographer circling like a shark, and Daphne, God, she looked confident. Auburn hair up, emerald earrings I bought her for our 20th anniversary, catching the light from every angle. Her friend Ramona spotted me first, leaned in, whispered something. Daphne turned, and the smile that crossed her face wasn't warmth, it was theatre. Phil, she opened her arms like I was a distant cousin she'd politely invited out of obligation, pulled back and looked at me the way you look at something that doesn't quite fit the room. You came. Wouldn't miss it, I said. She tilted her head, reached into a clutch. Actually, she said it loud enough for the nearest 12 people to hear, I've spoken to a lawyer. It's all very straightforward. The house, the savings, spousal maintenance. You'll be fine, Phil. You're resourceful. Resourceful. 23 years, and that's the word she landed on? The room had gone quiet the way rooms do when people smell blood. Phones up, eyes sideways. A woman near the bar, mid-20s, one of the models, whispered to a friend, and they both looked at me and looked away laughing. I stood there, held the envelope, felt the weight of it. And then I did something Daphne did not expect. I smiled. Not because I was okay, because for 22 months I'd been waiting for this exact moment. Because while she was planning this dinner, I was planning something else entirely. Because the man she just handed divorce papers to in front of 100 witnesses in my building at my brand launch, funded by my money, had already spoken to his lawyer 6 weeks ago. I slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket. Thank you, Daphne, I said quietly. Enjoy your night. I walked to the far side of the room, pulled out my phone, and made 2 calls. The first lasted 40 seconds. The second lasted less. By the time I reached the lifts, the caterer's payment system had already failed, the account at the venue was frozen, and Daphne Mullins, who had just announced to Melbourne's fashion elite that she didn't need her nobody husband anymore, had $0 of legal authority over anything in that room. I stepped into the lift, the doors closed, my phone buzzed, then again, then again. It was 1:14 in the morning when I heard her key in the door. I was already in my home office, ground floor, back of the house, in our Fitzroy Terrace, the one I'd bought off the plan in 2009, the one with my name on every document, the one she'd redecorated twice without asking and called Our Aesthetic. I didn't go upstairs. I sat in my chair and waited. Her heels on the floorboards above me sounded different than usual, faster, uneven, the clicks of a woman who'd spent the last 2 hours trying to hold a room together while the floor dissolved beneath her. "Phil!" I said nothing. "Phil!" The basement door opened. She found the stairs, and when she appeared at the bottom, Daphne Mullins, the woman Melbourne's fashion press had photographed 40 minutes ago, she looked like a different person entirely. Mascara, gone. Composure, gone. The gold dress was the same, but it was wrinkled now, and she was holding her heels in one hand, like she'd given up on them somewhere between the Langham foyer and the car park. She looked at me sitting behind my desk, and something crossed her face. Not guilt, not yet. Still anger,
but underneath it, the first flicker of fear. "What did you do?" she said. "I went home," I said. "The caterers couldn't process payment. The venue manager pulled me aside in front of 3 investors, Phil, in front of them. The bar shut down at 10. People were leaving. Journalists were leaving." She stopped, pressed her forehead. "Fix it, tonight. Call whoever you called and fix it." I looked at her for a moment. Then I turned my monitor around. On the screen, the Australian Business Register, the trademark database, Morrison Mullins Holdings Pty Ltd. "Find the Daphne Mullins collection," I said. She leaned forward, read it again. That's filed under your company." "It was always filed under my company," I said. "You signed the documents, Daphne. Page 4. You just didn't read them." The room went very still. "The trademark, the business license, the IP, the supplier contracts, all of it sits inside an entity you have zero directorship in. You've been operating as a DBA, a trading name. You had the right to use the brand. You never owned it." She straightened up slowly, and I watched her do the mental arithmetic. 23 years of marriage, 6 months of launch preparation, $280,000 in funding, running through her head like a calculator she suddenly didn't trust. "You did this on purpose," she said, quiet now, which was worse. "I structured a business correctly. You just assumed I'd keep paying for yours." She put her heels down on the floor, sat in the chair across from my desk, the one clients used to sit in, back when I ran meetings from home, and she told her friends her husband was just an accountant. "Phil," the tone changed, softer, careful. "We can renegotiate the divorce terms. I was too abrupt tonight, I know that. We can sit down with both lawyers and work out something fair. You'd still have access to—" "I filed 6 weeks ago," I said. She stopped. "Fault-based, adultery, financial misconduct." I opened the desk drawer, slid a folder across to her. "Douglas has been thorough. That's my solicitor. You'll want to read from page 6. That's where your relationship with Sylvester Chen becomes a matter of legal record." Sylvester Chen, fashion photographer, 31 years old, based in Collingwood. I watched her face go the color of the wall behind her. "How long?" she said. It wasn't really a question. 11 months, I said. "Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, 2 weekends in Noosa, all on the Amex, my Amex." She opened the folder, closed it, pushed it back. "Phil, the personal accounts get frozen at 8 a.m. The joint card stops working tonight. There's a guest room upstairs. You're welcome to use it while your solicitor advises you on your actual legal position." She stood up, and for a moment I thought she was going to scream, the way she used to when something didn't go her way, that sharp rising pitch that I'd spent 2 decades trying to prevent. But she didn't scream. She picked up her heels, walked to the stairs, stopped with one hand on the railing. "I don't know who you are," she said, not cruel, almost genuine. "I know," I said. That was always the problem. She went upstairs. I listened to her footsteps cross the hallway, heard the guest room door close. Then I opened my laptop and sent one email to Janice, my business partner, the one person who knew everything, every account, every asset, every move I'd made over the past 22 months. 2 words: Phase 3. She still didn't know the full number. She thought she was fighting over a Fitzroy terrace and a frozen business account. She had no idea what was actually waiting.
Janice O'Coffer did not waste words. 7 years as my financial partner, built Morrison Mullins Holdings from a single investment property in Brunswick into something neither of us talked about loudly. She was the kind of woman who wore plain clothes to meetings so people underestimated her, then walked out with everything she came for. She called me at 7:52 a.m. Douglas got the response from her solicitor, she said. They're claiming half of all marital assets, spousal maintenance, the house. They're also threatening to argue you concealed wealth during the marriage. I poured my coffee. Let them argue it. Phil. A pause. They don't know the number yet. I know. When they find out the number, I know, Janice. She exhaled. Okay. Settlement conference is Thursday. I'll have everything ready. Thursday came gray and cold the way Melbourne mornings do in April, that particular kind of damp that gets into your collar before you reach the door. The conference room was on level 31 of a Collins Street tower. Douglas had booked it. Long table, water jugs, that particular silence of a room where money is about to change hands. Daphne arrived 8 minutes late with her solicitor, a woman named Ramona Steele, mid-50s, high-asset divorce specialist, the kind of composed that's been professionally trained. Daphne looked better than she had 4 nights ago. Hair done, dark blazer, she'd recalibrated, decided to come in steady. She didn't look at me when she sat down. Smart. Ramona opened her notes. My client contributed 23 years to this marriage. Household management, social capital, creative direction of a business venture. She is entitled to... Janice connected her laptop to the room's screen without a word. The first slide was a timeline. Our marriage on one axis, asset acquisition on the other. Ramona stopped talking. Every property, every investment, every business holding was acquired using income generated solely. Janice Okafor did not waste words. 7 years as my financial partner, built Morrison Mullins Holdings from a single investment property in Brunswick into something neither of us talked about loudly. She was the kind of woman who wore plain clothes to meetings so people underestimated her, then walked out with everything she came for. She called me at 7:52 a.m. Douglas got the response from her solicitor, she said. They're claiming half of all marital assets, spousal maintenance, the house. They're also threatening to argue you concealed wealth during the marriage. I poured my coffee. Let them argue it. Phil. A pause. They don't know the number yet. I know. When they find out the number, I know, Janice. She exhaled. Okay. Settlement conference is Thursday. I'll have everything ready. Thursday came gray and cold the way Melbourne mornings do in April, that particular kind of damp that gets into your collar before you reach the door. The conference room was on level 31 of a Collins Street tower. Douglas had booked it. Long table, water jugs, that particular silence of a room where money is about to change hands. Daphne arrived 8 minutes late with her solicitor, a woman named Ramona Steele, mid-50s, high-asset divorce specialist, the kind of composed that's been professionally trained. Daphne looked better than she had 4 nights ago. Hair done, dark blazer, she'd recalibrated, decided to come in steady. She didn't look at me when she sat down. Smart. Ramona opened her notes. My client contributed 23 years to this marriage. Household management, social capital, creative direction of a business venture. She is entitled to... Janice connected her laptop to the room's screen without a word. The first slide was a timeline. Our marriage on one axis, asset acquisition on the other. Ramona stopped talking. Every property, every investment, every business holding was acquired using income generated solely by Mr. Mullins. We have the tax returns, we have the transaction records, we have the entity structures. Nothing was concealed. Everything was simply unnoticed. Daphne's eyes moved across the screen. Mrs. Mullins' total personal expenditure over the past 5 years was $611,000. Designer clothing, international travel, spa accounts, private art purchases. None of it invested, none of it retained, all of it gone.
Ramona interjected. That doesn't speak to her employment history, Douglas said quietly, sliding a single page across the table. 4 months total across the duration of the marriage. The last position ended when the hours conflicted with a trip to the Amalfi Coast. Silence. Janice clicked to the final slide. One number. $9.4 million. The room changed. You could feel it, the way air pressure changes before something breaks. Ramona's pen stopped moving. Daphne's jaw didn't drop. It went tight, like a woman doing everything in her power not to react. That's the current valuation of Morrison Mullins Holdings and affiliated entities. Investment properties across Victoria and Queensland, a tech portfolio, a stake in an eco-resort in far north Queensland, dividend income, rental income, capital returns, all of it documented, all of it legal, all of it earned while Mrs. Mullins described her husband to friends as... Janice pressed play. Daphne's voice filled the room, clear as a phone on speaker. Phil is a useful man, useful the way a dishwasher is useful. You don't think about it, it just runs. I watched Daphne close her eyes. The recording was 14 months ago. Dinner with Ramona, the friend, not the solicitor, and 2 other women I'd met maybe twice. Vivian Torres, her closest friend for 16 years, had handed over 3 hours of recordings without hesitation. She'd called me herself, said she was done watching it. Done watching what? I asked. Her, Vivian said. Just her. Ramona Steele closed her notepad, asked to speak with her client privately. They were gone 19 minutes. When they came back, Daphne's composure had a crack in it. Small, right at the jaw, but there. My client is prepared to accept a revised settlement, Ramona said. 2 years of transitional support, a one-time payment, no claim on business assets. Douglas looked at me. I shook my head once. Mr. Mullins's position, Douglas said, is that Mrs. Mullins has no valid claim to assets she didn't build, didn't know existed, and actively worked against through documented misconduct. His offer is a clean dissolution, no support, no payment, no claim. In exchange, we don't pursue recovery of the $23,000 in marital funds used to finance her relationship with Mr. Chen. Ramona started to speak. 5 p.m. tomorrow, Douglas said. After that, this goes to trial, and all of this, he gestured to the screen still showing $9.4 million, becomes public record. They left. I stayed in my chair until the room was empty except for Janice, who was already closing her laptop with the quiet efficiency of someone who knew how this would end before she walked in. "How are you feeling?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. "Like I should have done this 2 years ago," I said. She nodded, didn't push further. That was the thing about Janice. She understood that some answers don't need a response, just acknowledgement. My phone lit up on the table. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Sylvester. I think we should talk. She told me you were separated. I didn't know the full situation. I'm sorry." I turned the phone face down. Some apologies arrive too late to mean anything. And some doors, once you walk through them, you don't look back. She had until 5 p.m. the next day. What she decided, and what Philbert found waiting on the other side of it.
The call came at 4:57 p.m., 13 minutes before the deadline. Not from Daphne, from Ramona Steele. "My client accepts the terms." Douglas wrote it down, thanked her, ended the call. Looked at me across his desk with the expression of a man who'd seen this moment 100 times and still found it quietly significant. "It's done," he said. I nodded, drove home. Daphne was in the kitchen when I got back to the Fitzroy Terrace. Not cooking, just standing at the bench with both hands wrapped around a mug, staring at the garden through the back window. She'd been staying in the guest room 6 days now. We'd barely spoken. The house had developed its own strange grammar. Two people moving through the same space like they're in different time zones. She heard me come in, didn't turn around. "I signed," she said. "I know." "I want you to understand something." She turned then, and what I saw on her face wasn't the performance from the Langham. It wasn't the calculated composure from the conference room. It was something rawer than either of those, something close to genuine. "I wasn't always like this. I need you to know that." I set my keys on the bench. "I know you weren't," I said. And that was the hardest part, because it was true. There'd been a version of Daphne Mullins, Daphne Hartley before she took my name, who was sharp and funny and wanted things for good reasons. I'd loved that woman without reservation. Somewhere across 23 years of me saying yes to everything, of funding every impulse, of shrinking myself to fit around her expanding sense of what she deserved, somewhere in all of that, she'd stopped growing and started consuming. That wasn't entirely her fault. It wasn't entirely mine either. But fault was no longer the question. "Where will you go?" I asked. "Mum's, Geelong," she said. "For a while." I nodded. She picked up the mug, walked to the doorway, stopped. "The brand, the collection, all those designs, they were real, Phil. Whatever else I did wrong, those were real." I looked at her for a long moment. "I know," I said. "They were." Something moved across her face. Not forgiveness, too early for that, maybe too late entirely, but recognition. The specific pain of being truly seen by someone you treated like furniture. She went upstairs. I stood alone in the kitchen that I'd renovated in 2019 while she was in Positano with Ramona, the friend, and I thought about what 23 years actually weighs when you finally put it down. Heavier than you expect, lighter than carrying it. My phone rang. "Janice, you need to see something," she said. No preamble. That was always the signal with Janice. No small talk meant something real. "What is it?" I asked. "The Far North Queensland resort, the one we took the 18% stake in last year." A pause. "The other investors want out, all of them. Family dispute, estate complications. They want a fast exit. Phil, they're offering us first right of refusal on the remaining 82%. I sat down. "At what price?" I asked. She told me. The number was low, distressed sale low. The kind of number that happens once in the specific window between someone's crisis and everyone else noticing. "How long do we have?" I asked. 72 hours. I stood up, walked to the back window, looked at the garden, the one that Daphne spent $14,000 landscaping and sat in perhaps 4 times. "I'll send me everything, tonight," I said. "Already in your inbox." Another pause, shorter this time. "Phil, if this goes the way I think it goes, we're not talking about 9.4 anymore." I understood what she meant. I also understood something else, something I hadn't fully let myself think until this exact moment, standing in a house that was about to be just mine, in a life that was about to be just mine. For 23 years, I had built quietly in the margins of someone else's story. Now I had the whole page. "Book flights," I said. "We go up and look at it in person." "When?" she asked. "Saturday." A beat. "You sound different," she said. "I am different," I said. And I meant it, not as a threat, not as a declaration, just as a plain, true thing, the way you state a fact about weather or distance. The man that walked into the Langham, Melbourne 8 days ago, carrying an invitation that said, "Be there for my moment," he was gone. Daphne left for Geelong the next morning. She took 2 bags and the mug. Phil took a flight north.
Port Douglas in April sits between 2 worlds. Behind you, the Daintree, ancient, indifferent, older than anything you could build or break or lose. In front of you, the Coral Sea, flat and blue and going forever.
I stood on the deck of the Papillon Resort at 6:43 in the morning, coffee in hand, watching the light come up over the water, and I understood for the first time in a long time what silence was supposed to feel like. Not the silence of a house where two people had stopped speaking, the other kind. Janice was already at the table behind me, reading the acquisition documents. She'd been up since 5. That was the thing about her. She didn't perform industry. She just worked. The structural assessment came back clean. 26 bungalows, full spa, private beach access, working farm that supplies 3 restaurants in Cairns. The infrastructure's sound, what they let slide, is cosmetic. How cosmetic? $2 million in renovation, maybe 18 months to full repositioning. She looked up then. Phil, this place at full operation, conservative projection, returns 14% annually. We'd own it outright. I turned from the water, looked at the resort, really looked at it. The bougainvillea running wild over the entrance pergola, the pool that needed resurfacing, the open-air restaurant with the best view I'd ever seen going quietly to waste. All of it neglected, all of it structurally sound underneath. I knew that feeling. "Make the offer," I said. 6 months later. The settlement was long finalised. The Fitzroy Terrace had been refinanced, Daphne gone, the guest room repainted. I spent 3 weeks there before deciding it didn't fit anymore either. Too many rooms calibrated to someone else's taste, and leased it to a young family who sent me a photo of their daughter's first birthday in the garden. I kept the photo, put it on the fridge in the apartment I'd taken in Southbank. Clean lines, my books, a coffee machine I chose myself. No art on the walls yet because I hadn't decided what I actually liked, and for the first time in 23 years, I had the time to find out. I was up in Port Douglas every 3 weeks overseeing the renovation. Janice ran the financial side from Melbourne. We'd brought in a resort director, a woman named Adele who'd spent 12 years managing properties in the Whitsundays and spoke to contractors the way Douglas spoke to opposing counsel. Things got done. One Thursday afternoon, I was walking the property with Adele when my phone buzzed. Vivian Torres. I answered. "She called me," Vivian said. "Daphne. She's still in Geelong, working at a homeware store in the Bay Centre." A pause. "She wanted me to tell you she's doing okay. She didn't ask for anything, she just wanted you to know." I stopped walking, looked out at the coral sea through a gap in the tree line. "Thanks, Vivian," I said. "Are you okay?" she asked. Vivian had always asked the right questions, just never loudly enough or early enough to change anything. "Yeah, I actually am." And it wasn't a performance, wasn't the composed face I'd worn at the Langham or the measured voice from the conference room on Collins Street. It was just true, quiet and ordinary and true. The resort opened on a Saturday in October. 22 guests for the first weekend. By December, we were at 90% capacity. By February the following year, there was a wait list. Janice flew up for the opening. We stood at the bar at the edge of the deck, the same deck where I'd stood 6 months earlier watching the light come up, and she raised her glass. "To the nobody husband," she said. I laughed. "A real one." "To building quietly," I said. We drank. Below us, the guests moved through the warm evening, couples, families, a table of women celebrating something. The farm-to-table menu had been reviewed in the Australian Financial Review. The spa had a 3-month wait list. The bougainvillea had been trimmed back just enough to look intentional without losing its wildness. Everything in its right place. Somewhere in Geelong, Janice Mullins was closing up a homeware store and driving home to her mother's house. Somewhere in Collingwood, Sylvester Chen was photographing someone else's wife and pretending it was love. And Philbert Mullins, the wallet, the dishwasher, the nobody husband who ran like a useful appliance in the background of someone else's life, was watching the coral sea go dark at the end of a day he'd built himself. No invitation required, no one's moment but his own. 23 years of quiet, 8 days of precision, and a man who finally understood that the most dangerous thing you can do to someone who underestimates you is nothing. Just leave and build. Drop your city below. I want to see where this reached.